Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Attendance check now. Agustin Ria, can you just say present if you're here? Agustin Ria, not yet. Not yet. All right. Almorade Mariel Joy, not yet here. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Better than last week?
Yes,
Yes. Yes.
Yes,
definitely.
thank you so much. So Agustin and Almorade, they're not yet here. All right, Andrada, Jessica.
Present po.
Almorade is here, all right. Andrada, Jessica, present.
Present.
Angeles, Ira.
Present po.
Antonina Clarence Noel.
Present po.
Antonio Hana.
Present po.
May Ann Badajos.
Present po.
Aaron Bautista.
Present po.
Clarice Bengson.
Present po.
Pitts Binarao. Pitts? No, not yet. Joyce Cabatuando.
Present po.
Ma'am, present po si Pitts, ma'am.
Present si Pitts. Nasaan si Pitts? Get Pitts. Join us later. I see. Mariel Kalanganan.
Present po.
Charlene Cruda.
Present po.
Leia May Daddies.
Present po.
Julian De La Cruz. None, not yet here. Okay, Roxy Destor. Roxy. Good afternoon, Roxy. Are you here? Not yet. John Red.
Present po, ma'am.
Mark Arvin Gapak.
Present po.
Charles Garcia.
Present po.
Julius Garcia.
Present po.
Dennis Gorospe.
Present po.
Emerald Jose. Not
Present po.
all right. Legaspi Julian. Yeah, I see you na, Julian. Limpangog Leslie.
Present po.
Thank you. Shahana Liwag.
Present po.
Joshua Manalastas.
Ma'am, present po. Ayaw po gumana ng video.
Ayaw
Kaya
gumana
nag-start
ng video.
Kaya nag-start po.
Sige.
Kabig po siya nag-freeze, ma'am. Kanina po nakawan po ako.
Sige. Manansala, Maria Evita. Manansala is not yet here.
May chat po si Vita po sa GC.
May chat po si Evita. Let me check. I see. Okay, sige. Camille Mendoza. Camille? Yes, Camille. There's something about your internet connection, Camille. Okay, Camille is here. Elizel, Orensia. Orensia, Elizel. No, not yet here. Kaiza, Pakis. Not yet here. Rhoda Pascual. Not yet.
Present po.
Ayan, there. Angeline Pineda.
Present po.
Paulo Postor.
Present po, ma'am.
Yeah, good afternoon. Rainiel Puno.
Present po, ma'am.
Rojas Crisel Marie.
Present po, ma'am.
Sige. Santay-Gelio. Mark Justin.
Present po.
Micaela Santiago.
Present, ma'am.
Joshua Sarabia.
Present po.
Gwen Sheen.
Present po.
Edrelyn Tan. Edrelyn Tan? Not yet. Everyone's been called, right? Sige, let's proceed. Can anyone tell me about what we have discussed the previous week? Kahit sino. Just raise your hand kung sino ang may naaalala from last week.
Early Christian po, ma'am.
Yes, Sir Paulo. What about?
Yung about po sa mga early Christian churches po. Tapos po yung Byzantine churches po, ma'am.
Sige, follow-up question. How would we know if it's an early Christian church or if it's a Byzantine church?
Pag early Christian churches po, ma'am, parang rectangular po, ma'am, yung shape po, ma'am, ng plan. Then, focused po, ma'am, sila sa function. Pero
Mhm.
po, pag nagpunta na po, ma'am, sa may Byzantine, parang magiging heptagonal na po yung mga plan. Then, mas nag-focus na po sila sa aesthetic. Naglagay na po sila ng mga mosaic na glasses, tsaka ornate designs po, etc.
Sige. Sige, I'll correct that a little bit ha. In early Christian, it's not really rectangular. It's more of, it follows the cross plan. It looks like a cross kasi your bema and your nave, they cross together, or your transept. Sige. Anyone else? Someone was raising his hand a while ago. Anyone else? Review? Mayan. Good afternoon, Mayan. Yes, what do you remember? Mayan, naka-raise hand ka.
Ma'am,
Yes.
medyo nag-lag po kayo. Ayan po.
Ayan.
Last meeting po, we've tackled about early Christian and Byzantine architecture nga po. The early Christian architecture po is the age of the early Christianity in Rome, and the practice of it was considered to be illegal, and the believers were persecuted. And because of this, people had to worship privately po. And later on, ginamit po nila yung basilica, which is firstly intended po for civil purposes, into a religious place for them to worship po. And yung unique feature nga po about this early Christian architecture is that the orientation of the facades face east, the cruciform ground plan, and the baptistery po. And on the other hand po, yung Byzantine architecture naman po, medyo similar po sila pero in separate, meron po kasi siyang separate history, katulad nga po ng sinabi nyo, kaya humiwalay po siya sa parang separate lesson po natin yung Byzantine architecture, which comes from the word naman po na Byzantium. And dito naman po, katulad ng binanggit ni Paolo kanina, is yung pinahalagahan po nila yung aesthetic ng building. And ang kaibahan naman po niya sa early Christian architecture is yung facades po nila ay naka-face sa west, dahil po ang ini-aim po nila is isentro siya dun sa may, yung ilaw sa may altar. And katulad din po ng nabanggit kanina na merong mga glass, mosaic glass, colored glass po para sa interiors nila. And yung circular and polygonal plans po ang ginagamit nila. And the most famous structure po na na-built during that time is the Hagia Sophia po.
Mayan, gusto mong ituloy hanggang postmodern? Mahaba pa yung time. Gusto mo na ituloy hanggang postmodern. Anyway, so that practically sums up, thank you, May, that practically sums up what we have discussed last week. So we know the early Christian churches, we know the examples of early Christian churches, we know Byzantine. So just to add dun sa sinabi ni May, si Byzantine kasi Byzantium started when Emperor Constantine wanted to establish a new Roman capital. Sige. Anyone else na meron pa na hindi nasabi ni May? Baka meron pa siyang hindi nasabi na alam nyo. So just raise your hand and wait to be acknowledged. Anyone else? Last na, before we start with today's lecture. Anyone else? Wala. Last na, ako na lang mamimili Sige, let's try. Sino ba yung 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? Let's try. Shahana, good afternoon. Shahana, good afternoon.
Good afternoon po.
Anything you want to add sa sinabi ni May na parang ready na siya for midterms?
Ano po, di ko po kasi masyado naintindihan kung nabanggit, di ko po masyado narinig kung nabanggit na po ni Mian. Yung sa may, natanong niyo po kasi sa akin nun kung ano po yung kahalagan niya po nung early Christian architecture noon sa ngayon po. So sabi niyo po dahil po doon sa mga parang doon po kasi nagsimula yung pag-evolve ng mga churches, ganun po. Yung mga basilica, yung wala po sa hindi yung dati po kasi di po siya ginagamit bilang for religious ganun po. Tapos ngayon po parang doon po nakuha yung mga plan po ganun.
So, nag-stick naman sa inyo yung lesson natin last week. Anyone na meron question or anyone who wants to clarify anything about the lecture last week? Or wala naman? Question, comment, suggestion about last week? Wala. All right, so it's safe to proceed na, no? Okay, let me just share my screen. Please, thumbs up if you can see my screen. A thumbs up if you can see my screen. Yes, Paolo can see my screen. Mayan can see my screen. Angelique can see my screen. Julian. All right, so everyone can see the screen, huh? Question. Last week, I gave you an assignment. Meron bang nagbasa? What is meant when we say Romanesque? Anyone? Let's try. Sample. Sige. So, random. Let's call someone randomly. Yung hindi ko pa naririnig. Joyce. Good afternoon, Joyce.
Good afternoon po.
Yes, Joyce. Joyce, what do you think is meant by the word Romanesque?
Ano po siya, from the word Roman po siguro,
Hmm.
ano siya yung galing po sa Romans, ganun.
Well, oo, technically yes. So, we can say na literally it means from the Romans or like the Romans or descending from the Romans is what we meant by the word Romanesque. So now, just a quick review of your HOA1. Joyce, can you call on your favorite classmate?
Jessica, ma'am.
Sino doon? Dalawa yung Jessica natin, di ba? Right?
Jessica Andrada po.
Jessica na favorite classmate ni Joyce. Tinuro ka niya. Yes. Asan ka? Joyce.
Yes po, ma'am.
Ay, sorry, Joyce. Jessica, asan si Jessica? Jessica, asan ka, Jessica? Joyce, wala yata si Jessica. Can you call on someone else?
Si Mariel na lang po.
Mariel Calara.
Tara.
Yes. Mariel.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Good afternoon, Mariel. Mariel, I can see you. Mariel?
Ay, ma'am, wala po akong earphone, kaya nakatutok po sa tenga ko eh.
Sige. Mariel, question. Very quick question. Can you remember something about the Roman era architecture that you had in your HOA1?
Yes po. Sa Roman po, dun po na-mastered yung curves, yung arches po and vaults. Tapos, katulad po ng sa Greek architecture, maano din po sila dahil po maganda po yung weather nila, yung activities po nila, madaming nagaganap sa labas, ganun po.
Thank you, Mariel. Sige, Mariel, dahil wala kang earphones, ako natatawag for you, sige, let's call on Rojas, Crisel Marie Rojas. Crisel, good afternoon. Crisel, yes. Anong natatandaan mo sa Roman architecture lesson natin sa HOA1?
Ma'am, absent po ako last meeting. Pero po,
HOA1 HOA1 ha.
oh, meron po siyang mga small windows po, ganun.
What? Sorry?
Characteristic niya po.
Ng Roman architecture?
Style po.
Roman, yes. Roman. Small windows for Roman.
Opo, ma'am.
Sige. Sure? Final answer? Sure na?
Hindi po.
Sige. Anyway, hindi naman sila very particular in their windows, Crisel. Pero sa Romanesque, we're going to be discussing about the windows kasi may magiging effect kung paano natin tinatayo yung structure in the Romanesque era. Sige. Sino pa ang pwedeng mag-recall ng Roman architecture for us? Guys, mag-on cam kayo kasi nalulungkot ako pag hindi ko kayo nakikita eh. Let's try. John Red. John Red, good afternoon. John Red, are you there?
Yes po, ma'am. Good afternoon po.
Sige. John Red, did you watch the uploaded recording on YouTube?
Ng
I
Week-
think you should kasi I mentioned you there and that I have minor corrections from your questions from last week.
yes po, ma'am.
All right. John Red, question. Do you remember anything about Roman architecture?
Mostly po Roman, by the time po kasi ng mga Romans, more on the concrete po, dome and arches po,
Yes.
yung mga structures po nila. Like the Colosseum po, ganyan.
Remember, one of the most important contributions of the Romans to the architecture is the invention or the discovery of the pozzolana kind of cement. Always remember that. Chat. Ma'am, good PM po. Ox lang po ba? Hindi ako mag-open ng cam. Yes, Camille. Sorry, binasa ko sa lahat. Camille, and this is, there's one more. Julian. Okay, sige. Anyway, who else? Let's try. One more. Someone's raising his hand. Aaron Jacob raised his hand. Yes, sir, Aaron. Good afternoon.
Hello po, naririnig po ba ako?
Yes, naririnig ka namin loud and clear, pero hindi ka namin nakikita.
Ah.
Aaron?
So,
Yan.
hello po.
Yan.
So, yung nare-recall ko po about Roman architecture is that naipangalan po yun sa isang king which is si King Romulus ng First Roman Kingdom. And yung mga naging contribution po ng Roman architecture is first the aqueducts, second is the concrete and cement, construction of roads and through arch.
Okay. So, that's one. That's one very important as well na contribution ng Roman architecture is the aqueduct, meaning to say, at that time, they put so much emphasis on hygiene, on water supply, kasi, di ba remember they have their common bath? What do you call that building? Anyone who knows how the public bath is called in the Roman era?
Thermae po ba yan?
Thermae, correct. It's the Thermae. Sige nga, magtatanong nga ako. You know, I still have my notebook from when I was reviewing for the board exam and I still have it. Sige, dahil sinabi mo na it's Thermae, yung parts naman tayo ng Thermae, gusto mo? Do you still remember the parts of the Thermae? Hindi na. Hindi na. No, it's fine. Hindi naman siya yung topic natin now. So, we're discussing Romanesque. Why am I asking you if you remember your Roman architecture? Well, primarily because Romanesque architecture is a mixture of Roman, Byzantine, Carolingian, a lot of influences. May Muslim influences pa nga at some point. Pero it's Roman architecture na ni-revive natin. So, si Romanesque is like a revival of the Roman era, pero may improvements kasi nahaluan ng ibang influences eh. When we get to Renaissance period, it's another revival of something else. Pero this one, sa Romanesque, it's more focused on the Romans. So let's have a review. The Romans based their architecture on Greek influences. So whatever we had, or hindi naman lahat, pero some of the buildings that the Greeks built, meron siya laging Roman counterpart. Can you give me an example? Sige, let's call on someone. Let's call on, sino pa ba ang hindi natin natatawag? Aha. Let's call on Paolo. Paolo Postor. Good afternoon, sir.
Yes po, ma'am.
Sabi ko
Yes po, ma'am.
kanina, the Romans, they based their architecture on heavily on Greek influences. Ano yung meron sa Greek architecture na meron din sa Roman architecture?
Kasi po yung columns po, may pag-use po naman yung mga columns.
Mostly yung columns. Correct. Correct naman tayo dyan. That's actually the answer that I'm looking for. Ano yung tatlong Greek orders, if you remember?
Doric, Ionic, Corinthian po, ma'am.
Alright. What are the 3 Roman orders? Nandyan sa number 8. You just need to read.
Tuscan, Etruscan, and composite orders po.
Yep, but the mostly used before were the Tuscan, the simplest one, and the most complex, the more complex of the 3, which is the composite order. All right? Sige. Thank you, Paolo. Paolo, can you call on your favorite classmate?
Favorite classmate po?
Yes, sinong favorite mo?
Nako,
Patay
Lang po.
tayo dyan.
wait lang po. Sigurado po ready to eh.
Sino yung siguradong ready?
Si Joshua Saraga po.
Joshua, good afternoon, Joshua. Tinuro ka ni Paolo. Anong gagawin
Opo,
natin
ma'am.
dyan kay Paolo? Tinuro ka ni Paolo. Joshua, can you like open your camera for a while so we can see you? Yan. Huwag niyong tatago yung mukha niyo. Ang popogi niyo pa naman tonight. Sige, Joshua, second most important contribution of Roman architecture to us is colossal structures and elaborate ornaments on interiors. What does this mean?
Ma'am, yung about po sa sa mga interior po niya, interior sculpture po na matatagpuan po sa po nila, interior design po.
Yes, aside from the sculptures, they also had carvings on their walls. They also had technically murals on their walls. And then malalaki yung structure nila. They were grand, they were big. They wanted it to be big. Kasi I think that's one of the reasons why the Romans had an entire chapter in our discussion. Kasi their structures are really built for a lot of audiences, for a lot of people. For example, the Roman Colosseum, diba? It's meant to house how many people? Sige. Joshua, thank you so much. Joshua, can you call on another your favorite classmate?
Ma'am, si Clarence po. Clarence Antonino po.
Clarence Antonino. Good afternoon, Clarence.
Yes po, ma'am.
Yes, Clarence, can you open your camera? We want to see your face. Ayun. Against the light naman pala, kaya hindi nag-open. Clarence, good evening. Yes, Clarence, question. Sinabi na kanina during the recall, the Romans used arc, the vault, and the dome. So, what do you think allowed for this development in architecture?
Ano po ulit? Sorry po.
Si number 3, di ba? Kanina, during the recall, sinabi ng isang classmate mo na the Romans used arc, vaults, and domes. So, anong tingin mong nag-allow ng ganitong development in construction?
Sa tingin ko po, kaya po ginamit po yung ganyang mga arc bolt and hindi ko po alam. Sorry pa.
No, it's fine. It's fine. Okay lang na hindi natin alam for now. Pero pag sa end ng SEM, di nyo pa rin alam, ibang usapan yun ha. So yung arc, yung vault, yung dome, what allowed this innovations in constructions were yung discovery ng semento or ng pozzolan. So mas madali nilang nagagawa yung mga ganitong bagay kasi meron na silang semento. They don't have to sculpt in marble. They don't have to carry stones, 'di ba? Unlike before. Remember the Egyptians, they built using stones na pinagpatong-patong lang nila? And they had very intricate connections para hindi mag-fall off yung mga stones, 'di ba? So use of concrete, we already know that. Fifth one, recall for your Roman architecture is the use of colonnades or yung colonnaded structure. What do we mean? Yung maraming columns and arcs all together. You imagine the Colosseum, the front of the Colosseum. That's what we meant when we say colonnades. And our column capitals, which is number 8, the Tuscan, the Etruscan, and composite column orders. The use of marble, granite, and alabaster, stucco finish, and mosaics. So these are the summary of your Roman architecture, the contribution of the Roman era. Bakit ito importante? Kasi the Romanesque era is basically Roman architecture with other influences combined. Now let's take a look at Roman architecture. Romanesque architecture. During the time of the Romanesque era, kalat na yung religion, kalat na yung Christianity. Remember, in early Christian, ang goal nila is just to have a place of worship. Ang goal nila is just, paano ba namin ipapractice yung faith namin? And then eventually came Byzantine, paano namin ipararamihin? At paano namin pananatilihin yung mga members namin within the church? So now, during the Romanesque era, andito na sila sa time ng mga crusades and pilgrimage. What do we mean when we say pilgrimage? Anyone? Sige. Let's call on someone. Pitts. Pitts Jerome, good afternoon. Pitts, are you there?
Hello po, ma'am.
Hello? Yes, good afternoon, Pitts.
Hello, ma'am.
Medyo mahina dating sa akin, Pitts.
Hello po.
Yan. Pitts, what do you think? What do you think pilgrimage means?
Ito po ay na-search ko.
Wow. Sige, go Google.
Ito po ay yung journey daw po pa into an unknown or foreign place daw po.
Journey into the unknown or foreign place. Yan yung definition ni Google. Check ko nga. Yan yung definition ni Google. Sige, ganito yan. Ang daming nag-chat. Nawawalan daw sila ng connection. Alright. Sige. Let's move on for a while. Sana yun? Pits, tama naman yung question. Yung answer. So, yung pilgrimage is sort of a journey. Pero bakit nila ito ginagawa at that time? Remember, at this point in time, laganap na yung Christianity. They don't have to they don't have to work as hard to spread the religion as before. So, meron na silang sense of journey. Kasi, at this point in time, kailangan nilang, alam nyo yung, they know already the teaching of Christianity. So, ang goal nila now is to have salvation. Kasi, technically yun yung goal ng Christianity on bakit tayo nagkakaroon ng teachings about Christianity. Is, to be saved. So, they believe na pag ginawa nila yon, they have traveled long and wide, they have a better chance. Diba? So, an example of the church kung saan sila nagpipilgrimage is this church in Spain. You see the map. Everyone from Paris, from a lot of places in Europe, I'll open my pointer. Everyone from these places, they travel to this part of Spain. So this is going to Santiago de Compostela to deepen their connection with God or to feel connected with Christianity further. Yan yung goal nila. So Wait lang, we're having technical problems with our recording. Yeah, can you hear me, guys?
Yes
Yes
po,
po,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Yes po,
Sorry, kala ko nawawala ako kasi nawawala kayo. Anyway, sige. Moving forward, so during that time, pilgrimage was it was rampant. They wanted to travel to deepen their relationship with God. They wanted to travel to this specific church. Now, why Santiago de Compostela? That's your assignment for next week. That's your assignment for next week. You have to tell me bakit nagpipilgrimage yung mga tao to Santiago de Compostela. Okay? So, Romanesque period. It took an inspiration in old Roman buildings. So, lahat or most of the parts ng Romanesque is taken from the Romans. Example, this is, can anyone tell me what the photo is? Can anyone tell me kung ano yung nasa photo? Guys, nag-lunch ba kayo or nag-ano ba kayo? Ba't parang wala tayong energy tonight? May pinagdadaanan ba lahat?
The Pisa Cathedral po.
Pisa Cathedral, who said that? Aaron. Thank you, Aaron. So this is Pisa Cathedral. Actually, the entirety of this picture, this is what we call the Piazza de Miracoli or the miracles, the Square of Miracles or Plaza of Miracles. So, okay, wait, let me get my pointer. Remember the baptistery? This is the baptistery here. And this is your campanile, your tower. And this is your church or your cathedral. Okay? So, yung characteristics ng Romanesque architecture is number one, we have heavy articulated masonry. So, we have vaulted masonry ceiling. Ibig sabihin nito, yung mga kisame natin are now made of vaults. So, later on, we'll know about the vaults, but can you tell me as early as now, ano yung klase ng vault na naaalala nyo from your Roman era? Klase ng vaults. Guys, bakit lahat kayo ay naka-off cam bukod kay Micaela? Arvin. Mark Arvin Gapak. Arvin, good afternoon. Arvin. Wala si Arvin. Alright.
Ma'am, bolt po ng Roman period po.
Yes, sir. Anong vault ang natatandaan mo in your Roman era?
Hindi ko po sure, pero yung ano po ba to? Yung mga yung mga bronze po ba, metal, ganun. Yun po ata.
Sorry, Arvin?
Bronze po. Bolt. Bronze bolt.
No. I was asking about the type of vaults. As in vault, as in yung round arc shape na in-extrude natin. Yes, Evita Manansala.
Ma'am, ito po ba yung mga barrel bolt?
Yes. Do you remember your barrel vault? What does it look like?
Ano po siya, yung texture po niya sa taas para po siyang pinagtagpi-tagpi po na kahoy po, parang barrel po yung itsura, ganun po.
Well, technically hindi. Sorry. Technically hindi. Pero later on, we'll find out. Meron pa isang naka-raise yung hand. I think it's Manansala.
Ma'am, ako po yan.
Ay, sorry. There's someone else who raised her hand. Sige, later na lang. Oh, yes.
Yung dalawang types po ng vault during Roman era, meron pong tinatawag na, sabi nga po ni Vita kanina, is yung barrel vault. Kung mapapansin niyo po, yung itsura po niya is makahawig po niya. Alam niyo yung sa igloo po, yung entrance ng igloo.
Yes.
So parang single entrance lang po yung barrel vault.
Yes.
Yung isa naman po is yung Roman wagon vault po, wherein ito naman po is parang intersection ng dalawang barrel vault. So, bali magkabilaan po is may entrance po. Parang ganun.
Question. Kung itong kisame nito ay barrel vault, itong kisame nito ay barrel, ito rin dalawa dito sa magkabila ay barrel, itong gitna anong tawag natin? Yung intersection ng dalawang vault. Ano ulit tawag natin doon?
Roman wagon po.
Yes. So later on, we will call that as the groin vault. So kung binasa niyo yung visual dictionary, you will see it there. Actually, hindi niyo siya kailangan basahin lahat. Pero just at I think about the churches, andun din siya. Sige. Thank you so much. So, we have the vaulted masonry ceiling. We have thick load-bearing walls. So, mas makapal yung walls niya. And then we have the buttress piers. So, I think this is the first time that you're hearing about buttresses, no? Or have you heard of this term before? Has anyone heard of the term buttress before? Wala pa. Sige. Sige, let's take a look later ha. Pero dahil nga makakapal yung kanyang walls, mas makapal yung kanyang walls and then may integrated na buttress piers sa mga pader, it's safe to say na dahil doon, mas maliliit yung mga openings. So, mas maliliit yung bintana. So, mas konting ilaw yung pumapasok sa structure. Mas madilim siya compared to our Byzantine era architecture, di ba? Sige, go. Moving on. So, Romanesque architecture, we have the Latin cross plan, meaning mas mahaba yung isang side than the other one. Again, your parts of the cathedral or parts of the basilica, you have your nave and now you have your transept. You still have your apse here. Sige, so the barrel and the cross vault or the groin vault. So, in Romanesque architecture, nagkaroon tayo ng addition of the towers. So, this tower served mainly as the campanilla. So, it served as the campanile. The Leaning Tower of Pisa is actually a campanile. So, we have little to sparse ornamentation. Yun yung difference nila with Roman architecture. Mas konti na yung mga ornaments niya sa loob. And now, the facade is now facing the west. Remember, early Christian churches, the facade faced the west. Now, in Byzantine architecture, the facade faced the east. And now, binalik nila sa west. Ang reason nila to do that, or in doing that, is that yung altar yung oriented natin in the east. So, the altar is the one receiving the light. So, any questions so far? Any questions so far? Questions, comments, suggestions? Gusto nyo ba ng break? Ano ba? Let's call someone. Baka may tanong kayo? Or everyone naiintindihan yung lecture natin? Nakakasunod lahat? Yes, thumbs up naman kung nakakasunod lahat sa discussion natin. Thank you. Thank you everyone. Sige, at least meron akong sure na 13 nakikinig. Yan, 15 na sila. Alright, so moving forward. These are what we call the buttress piers. So ano ba yung buttresses? Can you see my pointer? This is the buttress. So kung meron kang exterior wall, si buttress nasa labas siya. Si buttress ay support na sumasalo ng bigat nung arches. Sumasalo ng bigat nung structure natin. So these are your buttress piers. Later, in Gothic architecture, or next week when we discuss about Gothic architecture, you will hear the term flying buttress. So it's a different kind of buttress, but it serves the same purpose. So a buttress is an exterior support, usually made of masonry. Actually, most of the time, it's masonry. Bato, buhos, bricks, whatever, na mas mabigat para madala niya yung weight ng arc or ng kisame or ng bubong, ng roof. So it projects from the face of the wall and serving either to strengthen it or to resist the side thrust created by the load on an arc or a roof. So, nakasandal siya sa pader. Remember when we said that Romanesque architecture had thicker walls? So, it having thicker walls, we now have less space for windows. So, kung ito yung span mo, meron kang buttress, then may makakapal ka pang walls, that lessens your opening. So, mas madilim sa loob. I think they believed it to be more solemn though. Anyway, moving forward. Another influence of Romanesque architecture is your corbelled arches. So what is a corbel? This is a corbel. It's a support. So we can see it there. Meron ng corbel yung arches natin. And corbel arches are actually a kind of construction or a type of vault or arc construction that is different. Kasi ang ginagawa nila is corbel, then another corbel, then another corbel, then another corbel, hanggang magsara siya. That's one of the corbelled arc. That's the corbelled arc principle. Any questions so far?
None po, ma'am.
None so far. All right. So, ito yung sinasabi natin kanina. Yung types ng vaults that we encountered. So, we have the arc. These are the parts of the arc that you should always remember. And if binasa nyo, again, yung visual dictionary, it's there. You'll see this. So, this is your arc. You have your keystone here. You have your poste here. So, pag si arc, in-extend ko ng pahaba, I will have my barrel vault. See? Meron akong arc dito. Kung nasa SketchUp ako, i-extrude ko siya pa ganon. So, I have my barrel vault. Ngayon, yung sinasabi nating groin or cross vault or yung sinasabi nating Roman wagon vault, sila yung type ng vault na intersection siya ng dalawang barrel vault. Remember kanina, meron tayong isang mahabang nave and meron tayong transept na nag-cross. This is what happens. Meron kang cross vault or groin vault. Any questions so far? Wala naman. Remember, mas madali nila itong nagagawa kasi very, very evident yung paggamit nila ng masonry construction. Aside from cemento, they also relied on masonry. Okay? Next is, these are the parts of your Romanesque church. So, you still have your nave, you still have your aisle, you have your transept, you still have your apse here, and then now, nagkaroon tayo ng towers. So, ito yung naging addition. From the early Christian and the Byzantine architecture era, you now have your towers in your Romanesque architecture. So, any questions so far? Wala pa naman. Our next topic will be Gothic architecture. It's going to be very interesting. If you find Romanesque architecture a little bit boring kasi it's actually this Romanesque architecture, it really is just a review of your Roman architecture. Meron lang tayong mga elements na minix in. Remember, I asked you, anong element ng Roman architecture natin before? We said the columns, the colonnade, the column capitals. We said the masonry construction. We said the arc and vault construction. If you can see, ayan siya, oh. You have your arches. You have your arches. Then you have your barrel vault spanning through the arches. And here at the center, you have your cross vault. Kasi doon nagko-cross yung number 1, your transept and your nave. So any questions so far? Or kaya ba nating i-identify pag ang nakita nating church ay early Christian church yan? Okay. This one is a Byzantine church. This one is a Romanesque era church. Kaya na ba nating i-identify? Yes, kaya? Sige. This is an example of a Romanesque church. You have the Worms Cathedral. This is how it looks like. So this is your plan. You have your eastern apse, you have your western apse, you have your towers. You still have your nave, you still have your transept, you still have your altar here. See? Ayan siya in actual. And then you have here, this one. Asan ang pasukan natin? Nasa left, nasa right. Nasaan pasukan natin, mga kaibigan?
Right po.
Sure?
Sa left lang.
Nasa left. Remember, the facade now in Romanesque architecture faced west. Okay, see this one, and this two. Ito yan, oh. It's this one and this one and this one. So, andito yung pasukan natin. Ito yung buong nave. Ito yung transept natin na nag-cross. So, it still forms a Latin cross sa plan. So, do we follow? Yes? Yes. Another example, this is one of the photos that I showed during the introduction. It's the Canterbury Cathedral from the Romanesque era. Right now, you'll see these are the buttress piers. These are your buttresses. This is your tower. This is your transept, and this is your nave. Itong side na mas mahaba is your nave. And an intro to Gothic architecture, we will have our rose windows in Gothic architecture. It's not really a characteristic of Romanesque architecture, pero merong mga churches that has the rose window. Pero this is more evident in our Gothic architecture discussion. So, remember, mas maliliit na yung windows niya, mas maliliit na yung openings niya than the previous ones because they had to allow for thicker walls. They had to give spaces for the buttress para masuportahan yung arches nila. Atop, these are arches. Tapos yung buong vault natin. So, any questions so far? Wala pa naman. Masyadong mabilis yung discussion natin. Kasi sa summary na tayo. Okay? Balikan ko lang ha. Kasi we still have time. This is your Pisa Cathedral. This is your Piazza del Miracoli. So you have your Pisa Cathedral here. You have the Leaning Tower of Pisa here. And you have your baptistry somewhere here. So what part of your Roman era architecture is present in the Piazza de Miracoli? Ano yung present here na Roman element natin? Para we can have a deeper understanding kung bakit Romanesque siya. Sige, anyone? Anong element ng Roman architecture ang makikita natin in the Pisa Cathedral or in the Campanilla or in the Baptistery? Meron bang element ng Roman architecture?
Yung vault po.
Yung vault, that's number 1. Who said that? Sige, who said that?
Ako po.
Thank you. Sige. Yung vault, of course, present yung vault. Can you tell me, anong places or anong structure sa Roman era ang kung saan sila nagdadaos ng kanilang religious activities? What did we have in the Roman times? What did we have?
Paulit ko ng question.
Sorry, Micaela. Can you tell me, since ikaw na yung nagsabi na ulitin ko, hi, Micaela, can you tell me, anong structure during the Roman era yung pinagdadausan nila ng kanilang religious activities?
Mga pinupuntahan po ba?
Saan sila nagpupunta for religious activities?
Santiago de Compostela, diba?
Ano? I mean, sa Roman architecture natin, sa Roman era natin, as in HOA1. Saan sila nagpupunta para mag-worship or magsagawa ng mga sacrifices or offerings? Anong klaseng building yung pinupuntahan nila? Definitely not churches. Definitely not a basilica. So, anong tawag?
Temples po, ma'am.
Temples, correct. Thank you, Paolo. So, sa temple sila pumupunta. Ngayon, in the Romanesque architecture, we have, kasi dumaan na tayo kay early Christian, dumaan na tayo kay Byzantine, we have the basilicas, we have the cathedrals, we have the churches already. Pero, dahil si Romanesque ay revival ng Roman era architecture, anong element yung makikita natin in this photo? Let me forward dun sa other photo. Baka mas makita nyo. Yan. Another photo. Anong element ni Roman architecture yung evident here? Do you remember your Colosseum? Does anything in this picture look like the Colosseum of some sort?
Yung mga arches po, ma'am.
Yung mga arches, remember the colonnades and the arches, it's here, it's present. So the Romans, they did not have a basilica, they did not have a cathedral, they did not have a church, they had temples. And these temples are just open places na may column capital, yung column, above the column, you have the pendentive, di ba? You have your decorative everything, no Roman era. Now, in the Romanesque era, they took the Roman influence, example, the colonnades, the barrel vaults, the cross vaults, the Roman order, the columns, they took it now and they made it into a church. Surprisingly, ginawa nilang church. This is still patterned with your basilica. 'Di ba? May question ba tayo so far? Any question so far? No question so far. So you know the difference already. Sige, let's try. Let's try yung panlima sa listahan ko. Okay, let's try. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Sige, let's try Clarice Bengson. Clarice, are you here?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, good afternoon, Clarice. Clarice, meron kang question for me?
Wala naman.
Wala naman po. Ibig sabihin, nasundan natin yung lecture from last week to this week?
Yes po.
Alright, question, Clarice. Paano kung masasabi na a church is Romanesque now? Paano kung masasabing hindi siya Byzantine, hindi siya early Christian? It's Romanesque now.
Sabi nga po sa may lesson po natin kanina, isa po sa mga characteristics po ng Romanesque po is thick po yung walls nila, malilit po yung windows dahil po sa malaking walls and yung support po which is yung buttress po and then yung mga bolts po.
Technically, yung mga vaults, pwede siyang gawin into other churches before eh. Hindi lang siya ginawa kasi ceiling nila is, well, mas evident dito yung mga vaults. Pero, I think, if you will ask me, what defines a Romanesque era architecture or a church will be the buttresses. We never had the buttresses in early Christian basilicas. Bakit? Existing basilica yun ginawa lang nilang early Christian basilica. Most of it were existing basilicas, ginawa nilang place of worship. That's why it was converted to an early Christian basilica. Hindi din natin nakita sa Byzantine yung mga buttresses. Bakit? Kasi they don't need the support. Yung plans nila were polygonal or square or technically maliliit that it can be supported by columns na hindi na kailangan ng masyadong maraming support. Now, you need the buttresses. Kasi, you're making a concrete arc eh. You're making a masonry arc. You're making vaults made out of masonry. We did not do that during the early Christian or the Byzantine era, 'di ba? Now, we have to use it. Kasi this one. We're utilizing masonry construction or concrete construction this time, mas mabigat na siya than what we've used before. Kaya, mas kailangan niya yung mga buttresses. 'Di ba? So anyone, any questions so far? May question ba so far? Walang question? Sure ka, Pits? Wala kang question? Nasundan mo, Pits?
Opo.
Nasundan
Wala po.
natin? Nasundan ha? Sige. So let's take a look at this photo all together. Ito yung magiging definition natin ng Romanesque church. So, for me, if you will ask me, the determining characteristic of your Romanesque churches will be the buttress piers. Later on, if we move to Gothic architecture, pasilip ko na rin sa inyo kasi tapos ko na siya. Sige, pasilip ko na sa inyo. Ito siya, oh. A quick Google search will give you this. So, So you still have your buttress piers, you still have, you now have your flying buttresses, you have your triforium, you have your clerestory, and your rib vaulting. This is for your Gothic half. Anyway, kasi later on, I will ask you guys, ano yung determining characteristic per each era of architecture? So you have to think about that. Anong kailangan para maging early Christian siya? Ano yung physical manifestation na early Christian siya? Ano naman yung physical manifestation na Byzantine siya? You know, Byzantine is very unique. Siya lang yung hindi cross plan. Siya lang yung polygonal plan. You know, the early Christian basilicas, they had the baptisteries outside. They had cemeteries outside. So sila yung pioneer on this kind of construction. Now, we go to Romanesque. Masonry yung construction nila. It's heavier. So, you have to remember, it's heavier. The interior is darker. Mas konti yung decor sa loob. The interior is darker because we have lesser openings. And we have lesser openings because we have to give way to the structural development, which is the use of thicker walls and buttresses or buttress piers. So here's a rundown of your Romanesque architecture. You now have vaulted masonry ceilings. You have thick load-bearing walls, so therefore less light. You have buttress piers. You follow the Latin cross plan. We now have the addition of towers for the first time. For the first time, following the other structures, we now have the addition of towers. Hindi counted yung minarets sa Hagia Sophia. These were added. These were added when it was converted into a mosque. Always remember that. So, wala tayong towers. Wala tayong towers sa early Christian Basilica. Wala tayong towers sa Byzantine architecture. This is the first time we're encountering the towers in our Romanesque era. We now have sparse or little ornamentation inside, and your facade faced west again. Si Byzantine era lang so far ang merong orientation sa east. Your early Christian basilica and your Romanesque churches, cathedrals, and basilica, they all faced west. So any questions so far? Pag wala kayong question, may quiz kayo next week. Questions, comments, suggestions on your Romanesque era architecture? Or did we follow the discussion tonight? Yes, questions, comments. Give it time. Magkakaroon kayo ng itatanong. I'll give you minutes to think. I'll give you some minutes to think ng gusto nyong itanong. I'm pretty sure meron kayong gustong i-clarify. May gustong i-clarify or did everyone? Hi, Micaela, yes.
May may times po kasi na parang napuputol-putol po ko rin. Parang about po sa paggamit ng semento. Sa may Romanesque era po ba siya nag-start? Ganun po ba?
No. Nagsimula ang paggamit ng semento during the Roman era. This is your HOA1 review, ah. Nag-start tayong gumamit ng semento when it was discovered as pozzolana. So ngayon, ginamit siya ulit in your Romanesque architecture, mas evident yung paggamit sa kanya, which is how we were allowed to construct the arches, the vaults, and the domes. Kasi mas rampant yung paggamit natin or mas evident yung paggamit natin ng masonry and concrete. Did I answer your question, Micaela? Sige, anyone else? Sige, while waiting for your classmates to have something to ask, has everyone answered our Google Forms?
Yes po, ma'am.
Yes po. Meron pang
Yes
hindi Meron pang hindi. I'll make sure to check kung sino pa yung hindi. Why are we doing that as early as now? Why are we evaluating the class as early as now? It's important kasi if you did not tell me, I wouldn't have bought a new set of headset. I wouldn't have bought a better connection. Kasi hindi ko alam na mahina na pala yung dating ko sa end nyo. So it's important for you to communicate to me what we need to improve in the class. Alright, so please make sure to answer kasi your answers will be strictly confidential. Your identities will be confidential. But at the same time, it would allow me to know what are the things that we need to improve during our class discussion. So any more questions from the class before we end? Before we end, any more questions? I'll give you some time to think. Or naintindihan natin so far yung discussion natin? See, Romanesque architecture is really straightforward. You just have to remember your Roman elements. You have to remember the other movements or other era of architecture that came before Romanesque period. So any questions so far? Comments, questions, suggestions, violent reactions? May hindi ako narinig today. Parang hindi ko naramdaman today si John Red, si Jessica, si Edrelyn, si Rhoda. Who else? Si Justin, Santay-Gilio. May questions ba kayo so far? You know what? You maximize the time we have in class. This is the time for you to ask questions kasi pag nag-exam kayo, ba magulat tayo sa exam. Any questions so far from anyone? None so far. So yeah, assume natin naintindihan ng lahat. Yes? So we end early tonight? Yes? We end early tonight. Ang daming gumagana na. Last na. Sige, let's try. Angelique. Good evening.
Good evening po.
Did you follow the whole discussion?
Opo.
Sige.
Okay.
If I ask you now, can you answer me? If I ask you now, can you answer me?
Opo, siguro.
Yeah, let's try. Let's try. Let's try. So we go back. We go back. Where is the entrance here?
Nasa left po.
Nasa left po. Bakit?
Kasi po nasa western po yung yung facade nung
Nasa west na ang facade. Very good. Thank you so much. So nakikinig si Angelique. Sige. What else? Wala na ba tayong question so far? Just remember, Romanesque architecture is basically your Roman architecture revived. Remember that. If may makita kang, this is Roman, like, Romanesque to. We'll talk about Gothic architecture next week and you'll find out na hindi ka parehas ni Gothic si Romanesque, although they share one specific, I think it's only one. They share these kinds of windows. We call it the rose window, pero mas ornate when we come into Gothic architecture. They're more pointy, they're more sharp, they're more how do I call this? The lines are sharper, the edges are sharper, it's more pointy than. So you have your keywords now: early Christian architecture, you have Byzantine architecture, you have your keyword there, it's light, and you have your Romanesque architecture, which is darker, heavier, buttresses. You have those keywords. Okay, you remember those keywords. And as assignment for next week, do you want me to discuss it now? Kasi I'll upload a Google form. That's something that you have to answer. I have 3 questions which are answerable by short essays. So this will be one of the 3 essays that you're going to write for me. So the question will be, you describe Romanesque architecture, you describe early Christian architecture, and you describe Byzantine architecture, and you give 1 example each. Okay, I'll upload the Google form, I think tonight. And you're required to answer that kasi this will be one of the essays that you will write for me. The second essay will come before midterm and the third essay will come before the finals. So, yun lang so far. Walang questions, meaning naintindihan natin lahat yung discussion. Sure? Final answer? No questions so far, guys. Make sure to answer the Google form that I sent last week. And make sure to answer the form that I will send out later tonight. Because this is technically your first essay homework for this class. So I'll see you guys next week, same time, Wednesday at 5 p.m. And I'll upload the recording in YouTube na lang. So we still have no questions from the class. None. Everyone follow the lecture tonight. Yes, we know early Christian, we know Byzantine, we know Romanesque. Yes, we will read the visual dictionary a little bit, ma'am. Yes? Yes, a little bit just about churches, okay? So I'll see you guys next week and read on our next topic, which will be Gothic architecture. And if you have any questions, feel free to message, chat, text, or send me an email. Thank you so much, everyone, and good night, or good evening, sorry.
Thank you po.